For 12 years, I cooked for her, bathed her, watched my career wither while tending to a woman who couldn't remember my name. Family comes first, Michael said when his mother's dementia diagnosis came. So I sacrificed everything: my partnership, track, our plans for children, my independence, all for Vivian. Until that night, I heard their midnight whispers through the baby monitor I'd hidden in her room. Her voice suddenly crystal clear. The brake line method seems cleanest. My husband's calm reply. By this time next month, we'll be free. Standing in the darkness, clutching my phone as it recorded their plans for my accident, I finally understood the truth. For 12 years, I'd been caring for a woman who could perfectly operate a television remote when she thought no one was watching. For 12 years, I'd been sleeping beside a man who'd done this before. They thought I was broken, exhausted, easy prey. What they didn't realize was that when you spend years thinking you're losing your mind, discovering you're perfectly sane brings a terrifying clarity. They wanted me dead for $2 million. Fine. But first, I would show them exactly who they'd been trying to kill all this time. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The call came during the most important presentation of my career. I remember the sudden vibration against my hip, the momentary hesitation as I weighed, ignoring it versus checking. Something told me to look. Michael's name flashed urgently on the screen, and I excused myself from the boardroom filled with potential clients who could have secured my partnership at Wilson & Brooks Architecture. Lil, it's Mom. Michael's voice cracked. She fell. They're saying it's dementia, early onset. Can you come to Mercy General, please? I need you. The taxi ride, too. The hospital passed in a blur of traffic lights and horn blasts. I was 35 then. With auburn hair, I still took time to style each morning and a wardrobe of tailored suits that made me feel invincible. I didn't know that day would be the last time I'd wear that particular armor for over 5 years. Dr. Patel met us in the hallway outside Vivian's room, his expression grave beneath fluorescent lights that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. Mrs. Matthews shows classic signs of rapidly progressing dementia. The fall appears to have been caused by disorientation. Has she displayed confused behavior recently? Michael ran his hands through his dark hair, inadvertently making it stand on end. I thought she was just being forgetful. She's only 62. His voice dropped to a whisper. After what happened with Dad, ... He turned away, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I placed my hand on the small of his back, feeling the tremors through his suit jacket. Michael had lost his father to a heart attack when he was only 16. Vivian had raised him alone, working 2 jobs to put him through college. They shared a bond I'd always respected, even envied a little. What are our options? I asked Dr. Patel. Professional care would be best. There are excellent facilities. No. Michael's voice hardened. No facilities. I won't warehouse her. Dr. Patel adjusted his glasses. Then you'll need full-time home care. This will progress rapidly. She'll require constant supervision. Later that night, curled on opposite ends of our sofa, Michael stared at the half-empty wine glass between his palms. I can't put her in a home, Lil. I just can't. The weight of what came next settled between us like a physical presence. I thought about the partnership I'd been chasing for 3 years. The promotion would have nearly doubled my salary. We'd been talking about starting a family once my career stabilized. We'll bring her to live with us, I said. The words emerged before I'd fully processed their implications. I'll take a leave from the firm. Michael's eyes widened. You'd do that? Your partnership? Family comes first, I said, the platitude falling easily from my lips. We'll manage. The next morning, I sat across from Theodore Wilson, the firm's managing partner. His office overlooked the river, a view I'd coveted since my first day as a junior architect. A leave of absence? Theodore's bushy eyebrows drew together. Lillian, we're about to vote on your partnership next month. My mother-in-law has been diagnosed with dementia. She needs full-time care. Hire someone. Use the partnership money. He leaned forward. You're making a mistake that will derail everything you've worked for. Take the 6-month sabbatical option at least. I shook my head. I need flexibility. It could be longer. As I cleared out my desk later that day, my colleague Diana stopped by. You're really doing this? She lowered her voice. For his mother? It's temporary, I assured her. Not entirely believing it myself. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. We converted my home office into a bedroom for Vivian, installing safety rails in the bathroom and locks on cabinets containing anything potentially dangerous. I joined online support groups, ordered books on dementia care, created labeled photo albums to help Vivian maintain connections to her memories. The day we brought her home, Vivian appeared frailer than I remembered. Her once commanding presence diminished. As Michael helped her into the house, she looked around our living room with wide, uncertain eyes. "Where's Robert?" she asked, referring to Michael's father, who'd been dead for 20 years. "Dad's not here, Mom. Remember, you're going to stay with Lillian and me for a while." "Lillian." Vivian turned toward me, her face briefly clouding with what looked like irritation, before confusion overtook her features again. "Who's Lillian? Your daughter-in-law, Mom?" Michael's voice carried the fragile patience of someone trying to guide a child through simple addition. "I don't, Toad. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. "I don't remember." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Then came the most disturbing part. Vivian tried to make coffee using the television remote, jabbing at buttons while growing increasingly agitated. Michael rushed to comfort her while I stood in the doorway, a cold realization washing over me. I had no idea what I was getting into. 6 months into our new reality, my friend Rebecca visited, bringing coffee and pastries from the bakery we once frequented on Saturday mornings, an indulgence I could no longer manage with Vivian requiring constant supervision. "Jesus, Lil," Rebecca said when I opened the door. "You look ... double quotes like hell." I attempted a smile. I'd caught glimpses of myself lately. Dark circles under my eyes, hair hastily pulled back. Wearing the same yoga pants for the 3rd day because who had time for laundry when Vivian had awakened screaming at 3 a.m. Convinced intruders were in the house. I was going to say tired. Rebecca set the coffee on the kitchen counter. "Have you considered getting help? There are professionals, insurance won't cover it. Michael says his mom doesn't want to deplete her savings." I lowered my voice. "Though Vivian was napping, it's rough, but we're managing." Rebecca's eyes drifted to Michael's wrist when he came in to grab coffee before heading to work. The gleam of his new Breitling watch caught the morning light. She said nothing, but I caught the slight narrowing of her eyes. "You still need breaks, Lil," she insisted. After Michael left, you can't pour from an empty cup. It was around this time my relationship with Michael began showing strain. He worked later, traveled more frequently for business. When he was home, he seemed emotionally distant. The night I confronted him, after another dinner eaten alone with Vivian, he crumpled. "I'm trying to keep everything afloat," he said, voice breaking. "The extra accounts, the travel, it's all to maintain our lifestyle now that we're on one income." His eyes, red-rimmed and pleading, met mine. "I'm doing my best, Lillian." I felt shame burning my cheeks. Of course he was struggling too. I apologized. We held each other, and I pushed aside the nagging feeling that something felt off about his reaction. A few weeks later, I took Vivian for her checkup with Dr. Patel. He reviewed her charts with a furrowed brow. "Her decline is unusually rapid," he noted, prescribing stronger medication. "Make sure she takes these exactly as directed." As Dr. Patel wrote the prescription, I noticed Vivian's vacant expression momentarily sharpen as she glanced at him. When she caught me watching, the foggy confusion returned instantly. I dismissed it as a trick of my exhausted mind. That spring, my younger sister Abby announced her pregnancy. During a rare dinner out to celebrate, Michael insisting I go, while he watched his mother, I excused myself to the restaurant and bathroom and broke down. Standing before the mirror, mascara tracking down my cheeks, I grieved for the family Michael and I had planned. The timing had been perfect before Vivian's diagnosis. Partnership, financial stability, then children. Now I was 36, with no clear return to my career in sight. Abby found me there, her hand instinctively cradling her barely visible bump as she pulled me into a hug. "I'll help more," she promised. "You shouldn't have to do this alone." On our anniversary, Michael presented me with an envelope over the dinner he'd ordered in. "I've been working with our insurance agent," he explained as I opened it. "It's protection for our future, given everything you've sacrificed." Inside was documentation for a substantial life insurance policy? On me. The coverage amount seemed excessive. "This seems high," I said carefully. Michael's expression hardened slightly. "You always look for problems, don't you? Can't you just appreciate that I'm thinking ahead?" I apologized, attributing my reaction to stress, and thanked him for his foresight. Later, lying awake beside his sleeping form, I wondered why his response had unsettled me so deeply. 3 years disappeared in the haze of caregiving. I barely recognized myself anymore. The woman who once led design presentations for multi-million-dollar projects now celebrated successfully getting Vivian to shower without a complete meltdown. My world had contracted to the walls of our house, my social connections withering from neglect. The chance meeting with James Porter at Newman's Pharmacy drove this home with painful clarity. I was picking up Vivian's medications when he approached, his familiar smile brightening when he recognized me. "Lillian Matthews, it's been ages." He clasped my hand warmly. Did you hear about the Singapore project? The one you initially designed? My stomach tightened. No. What about it? It won the Pritchard Award. Diana Foster led the team after you left. His enthusiasm dimmed as he registered my expression. I thought you knew, ... I've been ... preoccupied. I gestured vaguely to the prescription bags. Family matters. James nodded sympathetically. Well, don't be a stranger. The firm misses your eye for detail. That night, I opened my laptop after Vivian was asleep and searched for images of the Singapore project. The sleek lines and innovative use of sustainable materials had my design philosophy written all over them. But Diana's name was attached to every article. My vision, her acclaim. I closed the laptop, feeling something between grief and rage. The next morning, reviewing our bank statement, I noticed large withdrawals I couldn't account for. When Michael returned from his morning run, I showed him the statement. What's this? I pointed to a $12,000 withdrawal from the previous month. Investments, he replied, not meeting my eyes as he poured his protein shake. I've been working with a new financial advisor, without discussing it with me. That's a significant amount. Michael? His expression darkened. Someone has to think about our financial future while you single quotes, read ... double quotes. He gestured toward Vivian's room. Well, I'm what? Caring for your mother? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. That's not what I meant. His tone shifted abruptly, softening as he reached for my hand. I'm just trying to keep us afloat. Don't you trust me to do that? That afternoon brought one of Vivian's worst episodes. She refused to bathe, becoming increasingly agitated as I gently insisted. You're not my keeper, she screamed, her face contorted. Then, without warning, she slapped me hard across the face. I retreated to the hallway, hand pressed against my stinging cheek, fighting back tears. Through the partially open door, I caught Vivian's reflection in the bathroom mirror. The confusion cleared from her features for an instant, replaced by what looked disturbingly like satisfaction before the vacant expression returned. Later that week, I noticed Michael taking phone calls in private, stepping onto the back porch or into the garage. When I picked up his phone to hand it to him as it rang, I discovered he'd changed the password. He'd always used my birthday. Now the familiar digits yielded only an error message. Privacy is important, he said with a shrug when I mentioned it. Client confidentiality. The explanation made sense, but something in his delivery felt rehearsed. We rarely socialized anymore. But when our neighbors, the Wilsons, hosted their annual barbecue, my sister Abby offered to watch Vivian so we could attend. The afternoon sunshine and normal conversation felt like visiting a foreign country, familiar yet strange after so long away. I was refilling my lemonade when I overheard Carol Williams talking to another neighbor. Double quotes ... Saw him at Bellamy's again. Last Thursday with the same woman. Tall, blonde, definitely not his wife. Michael Matthews, her companion, clarified in a hushed tone. I set down my cup and walked directly to Michael, who was discussing football with our neighbor Tom. Can I speak with you? I interrupted, leading him behind the Wilsons' garden shed. What's wrong? Michael asked, looking genuinely concerned. Have you been going to Bellamy's restaurant? With a woman? His expression shifted subtly before settling into casual dismissal. Business dinners. With Diane from accounting? Strictly professional. You never mentioned these dinners, because they're not worth mentioning. He squeezed my shoulder. Don't create problems where there aren't any, Lil. The following month, Abby brought her 1-year-old son Tyler to visit. He should know his aunt, she insisted. The visit went well until Vivian emerged from her nap. Seeing the baby, she became inexplicably enraged, throwing a book and screaming incoherently. Tyler wailed in terror, while Abby quickly gathered their things. I'm sorry, she said at the door, bouncing her sobbing son. I don't think I can bring him around her anymore. It's not safe. That night I stared at the ceiling, feeling the walls of my isolation closing tighter. Michael slept soundly beside me, seemingly unburdened by the day's chaos. At Vivian's next appointment, Dr. Patel suggested a clinical trial for a new medication. It requires weekly visits to the memory care clinic, he explained. The results have been promising. To my surprise, Michael insisted on taking his mother himself, despite his busy schedule. When I offered to help, he firmly refused. You need breaks, he said. Besides, the paperwork is complicated. I'll handle it. One afternoon, while cleaning Vivian's room, I found an expensive Chanel lipstick tucked beneath her mattress. Rouge Allure and Pirate, a vibrant red. Vivian had worn only Lauder in muted pinks before her illness, and certainly couldn't apply lipstick in her current state. When I showed it to Michael, his brow furrowed. You must have left it there yourself, he suggested. I don't wear Chanel, And definitely not this shade. Then you bought it for her before and forgot. Stress affects memory, Lillian. He took the lipstick and tossed it in the trash. Problem solved. That weekend, Rebecca invited me to her art gallery opening. To my surprise, Michael encouraged me to go. I'll take care of Mom. You deserve a night out. The gallery buzzed with conversations about art and politics, subjects that had once filled my days but now seemed distant, like memories from someone else's life. I was admiring a large abstract canvas when a voice beside me spoke. The artist uses chaos to represent order. Interesting technique. I turned to see a striking blonde woman in a black dress. Recognition flickered as she extended her hand. Diane Parker. I work with Michael at Stedman Financial. So this was Diane. I smiled, introducing myself as Michael's wife. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. I thought Michael was out of town this weekend. The Boston conference. My stomach tightened. No, he's home with his mother tonight. Diane's expression shifted to something unreadable. Of course, I must be confusing dates. I left the gallery early, driving home with my heart hammering against my ribs. When I pulled into our driveway, the house was dark. Inside, I found a hastily scrawled note. Mom having episode. Took her to, don't worry, call when you can. Frantic calls to every hospital within 20 miles yielded nothing. No Vivian Matthews had been admitted. I was about to call the police when headlights swept across the living room wall. Michael's car pulled into the driveway. He helped a perfectly calm-looking Vivian from the passenger seat. When they entered and saw me waiting, Vivian's expression, immediately clouded with confusion, who, she mumbled, leaning heavily on Michael. What happened? I demanded. No hospitals have any record of admitting her. Michael guided his mother to her room before returning to explain. We went to my office first. The clinic was unexpectedly closed, but she started having symptoms. So I thought it was best to monitor her somewhere quiet before trying the ER. She stabilized, so we came home. The explanation made logical sense, yet something about the timing, and Diane's comment about him being out of town, nagged at me. 5 years into caring for Vivian, I began noticing patterns. The severity of her confusion seemed to fluctuate depending on who was present. Alone with me, her symptoms were pronounced vacant stares, jumbled speech, inability to perform basic tasks, but occasionally, when she thought no one was watching, moments of startling clarity emerged. One Tuesday afternoon, I returned from the laundry room earlier than expected and paused in the hallway, hearing the television volume change. Peering around the corner, I witnessed Vivian confidently operating the remote control, adjusting the volume, changing channels, even navigating the program guide with ease. This was the same remote she supposedly hadn't been able to comprehend. For years, when I deliberately made noise entering the room, the transformation was immediate. The remote clattered to the floor as Vivian's features slackened into confusion. Television making noise, she mumbled, staring blankly at the ceiling. That night, I researched conditions that might mimic dementia. The list was surprisingly long. Medication interactions, vitamin deficiencies, thyroid problems, even depression. Without mentioning it to Michael, I scheduled an appointment with a different neurologist, Dr. Karen Levine. Given what you've described, a comprehensive reevaluation seems warranted. Dr. Levine said after listening to my observations, dementia diagnosis can be complicated, and sometimes symptoms fluctuate for reasons we don't fully understand. When I broached the subject with Michael that evening, his reaction was explosive. You went behind my back to another doctor? His face flushed dark red. What gives you the right to question Mom's diagnosis? I've been her primary caregiver for 5 years. I see things, you see what you want to see. He slammed his hand down on the counter. You're looking for an escape hatch, aren't you? Some way to justify abandoning your responsibilities? That's not fair, I whispered, shocked by his vehemence. I'll tell your family about this, he threatened, his voice dropping to an icy calm. That frightened me more than his shouting. About how selfish you've become? I backed down, apologizing profusely. The Michael-eyed married had never spoken to me that way. The following week, taking out the trash, I discovered orange prescription bottles with Vivian's name. Medications I didn't recognize. Back inside, I researched the names online. They were powerful sedatives, not typical dementia treatments. When Michael returned from work, I confronted him. Why is your mother taking these? I held up the empty bottles. I administer her medications, but I've never seen these. Dr. Patel prescribed them during her clinical trial visits, Michael explained smoothly. They're to help with her night terrors. I've been giving them to her before bed. Why wouldn't you tell me about new medications? Because you have enough to worry about, Lil. He took the bottles from my hand. I'm trying to protect you. Something about the way he said protect sent a chill through me. A week later, our kitchen sink developed a persistent leak. The plumber who came to fix it, Ray Donovan, was in his 50s with calloused hands and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "You have a lovely home, Mrs. Matthews," he said as he worked under the sink. "Thank you, and please, call me Lillian. No, your mother-in-law looks great. Saw her at Miller's Diner last month with some gentleman. Spry as can be." I froze. "My mother-in-law, Vivian, right. Silver hair, about yay tall." He gestured. "She was having lunch with a well-dressed fella. They were laughing up a storm. There must be a mistake. Vivian has severe dementia. She hasn't left the house without me in years." Ray frowned. "Maybe I'm confused. Getting older myself." He tapped his temple. "Memory isn't what it used to be." After he left, I sat at the kitchen table, thoughts racing. Could Ray have seen someone who resembled Vivian? Or was something more disturbing happening? I decided to conduct a test. I deliberately left my favorite sapphire necklace, a 10th anniversary gift from Michael, in Vivian's bathroom after helping her shower. Later, I casually asked if she'd seen it. Lace, she repeated vacantly, looking confused. That night, after everyone was asleep, I searched Vivian's room. The necklace wasn't misplaced or accidentally moved. It was carefully wrapped in tissue paper and hidden in the back of her dresser drawer. Deliberately concealed, not randomly misplaced. By someone with cognitive impairment? My phone buzzed with a text as I closed the drawer. A message from Michael to me. "Meeting at our spot. Make sure E is occupied." My blood ran cold until I realized it must be a misdirected text meant for someone else. When I showed it to him, the next morning Michael laughed it off. "It was for Doug in IT, about your anniversary surprise. E is for everyone in the office. Way to ruin the secret, Sherlock." His explanation seemed plausible, yet doubt lingered the following weekend. Abby visited with Tyler, now 3, and her newborn daughter Emma. I warned her about Vivian's previous reaction, but she insisted. "Their family, will keep it short if needed." While Abby and I caught up in the kitchen, Tyler wandered off. Moments later, we heard laughter from Vivian's room. We rushed down the hallway to find Tyler giggling as Vivian played peekaboo. With him, her movements coordinated, her speech clear. "Where's the little man?" "There he is," she cooed, covering and uncovering her eyes, when she noticed us standing in the doorway. Her demeanor transformed instantly. The animation drained from her face, replaced by familiar blankness. "Child?" she mumbled, looking confused. "Who? Child?" Abby shot me a look of bewilderment, but said nothing until we were alone. "What was that?" she whispered. She was totally normal with Tyler. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm going to find out." After they left, I purchased a nanny cam disguised as a desk clock and placed it in the living room. "It's to monitor Vivian's episodes while I run errands," I explained. To Michael, the support group recommended it. The next day, I deliberately left to go grocery shopping, telling Vivian I'd be back in 30 minutes. The moment I returned, I reviewed the footage. My hands trembled as I watched Vivian rise from her chair. The moment my car pulled away, she walked steadily to the bookshelf, selected a magazine, and sat reading it with perfect comprehension. Halfway through my absence, she made a phone call, speaking clearly into the receiver. "She'll be gone for at least 30 minutes. "Yes, I'm sure." "No, he won't be home until 6. When I confronted Michael with the video that evening, he sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "It's not what you think, Lil Mom. Has good days sometimes. It happens with dementia. Moments of clarity amid the confusion. Dr. Patel calls them islands of lucidity." The next day, Dr. Patel made a house call, confirming Michael's explanation while avoiding eye contact with me. That night, I discovered the nanny cam missing. "Mom must have broken it during an episode," Michael said with a shrug. "You know how she gets." By year 7 of caregiving, my isolation was nearly complete. Michael controlled our finances, managed Vivian's medications and doctor visits, and made most household decisions. My friends had stopped calling after too many canceled plans. At 40, I felt twice my age, drained of the energy and ambition that had once defined me. One rare bright spot was my mother's visit from Florida. Though she'd initially supported my decision to care for Vivian, she'd grown increasingly concerned about my well-being. We sat in the garden sipping tea while Michael was at work and Vivian napped, or so I thought. Through the open window, I heard my mother's name clearly. "Helen, tell me about that cruise you mentioned." My mother turned toward the voice, then froze. We both watched as Vivian approached the window, spotted us, and immediately transformed, her posture stooping, confusion clouding her features as she shuffled away. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "Honey," my mother sighed, patting my hand. "I know you want to believe she's getting better, but wishful thinking can play tricks on our minds." After my mother left, I searched Michael's home office while he was at work, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. In the back of his filing cabinet, I discovered documentation for a second life insurance policy on me. With a payout of $2 million, far larger than the one he'd shown me years earlier, my signature appeared on every page, but I had no memory of signing the documents. Looking closer, I realized the handwriting was similar to mine, but not identical. Subtle differences in how the L in Lillian was formed. The curve of the M in Matthews. I photographed everything with my phone before carefully returning the papers to their hiding place that weekend. Michael attended an overnight business conference. I pretended to take my usual sleeping medication, but poured it down the drain instead. When Vivian thought I was asleep, I followed her silently. Down the hallway, she moved with confident, steady steps. No trace of the shuffling gait she exhibited when others were present. In the kitchen, she prepared tea with precise movements, then settled in front of the television to watch a crime show, following the complex plot with apparent ease. Before returning to bed, she wrote in a journal she retrieved from behind the hallway baseboard, a hiding spot I'd never have discovered if I hadn't been watching. The next day, while Vivian napped, I located the journal and began reading entries dating back 5 years. April 15th. Elle still suspects nothing. The medication doses are working perfectly. She's constantly exhausted, making her easier to manipulate. M says, the second policy is in place. 2 more years should be sufficient. June 3rd nearly had a slip-up today, when the sister visited with her brat. Children are more perceptive than adults sometimes. Need to be more careful. September 8th. M concerned about L's questions about the financial statements. May need to accelerate the plan. Discussed options tonight. The brake line method seems cleanest. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the journal. References to the plan and when Elle is gone now had terrifying context. They were talking about me. I tried contacting Dr. Levine, the independent neurologist I'd consulted, but discovered her office number was disconnected. When I visited the medical building, a new practice occupied her former suite. Dr. Levine. The receptionist frowned. She relocated to Switzerland months ago. Very sudden. That night, a thunderstorm knocked out our power. From my bedroom, I heard Vivian's door open and followed silently in the darkness. Lightning illuminated the hallway in brief flashes, revealing Vivian moving confidently through the blackout. She used her phone's flashlight to navigate to the kitchen, where she made a hushed call. "We need to speed things up," she whispered, urgently. "I'm tired of pretending. It's been 7 years of this charade." Heart pounding, I retreated before she could discover me. The next day, I purchased a baby monitor, placing the transmitter beneath Vivian's bedside table and disguising the receiver as a white noise machine in my bedroom. For 3 nights, nothing unusual happened. I began questioning my sanity, wondering if stress and isolation had pushed me into paranoia. Maybe the journal was a symptom of Vivian's illness. Fantasies written during moments of confusion. On the 4th night, just after midnight, I heard Michael's voice through the monitor. "The policy's contestability period ends next month," he said, his tone clearer and colder than I'd ever heard it. $2 million, plus the house and your accounts. More than enough to disappear somewhere warm. "Not soon enough," Vivian replied, her voice sharp with irritation. No confusion, no hesitation. "I'm sick of playing this doddering old woman routine. You promised me 5 years, Michael. It's been 7. The brake lines are the answer," Michael continued. "She's driving to Abby's next weekend. That mountain road has had 3 fatal accidents this year already." "Not like last time," Vivian cautioned. "The sleeping pills in her food were too obvious. If they'd done the autopsy, they were considering ... This will look like a tragic accident. No investigation. By this time next month, we'll be free." My hand clamped over my mouth to stifle a scream as the truth crystallized with horrible clarity. They were planning to kill me. Had been planning it for years. And this wasn't their first attempt. With trembling fingers, I activated the recording function on my phone, capturing their conversation as they discussed specific details, which brake line to cut, how to ensure catastrophic failure at the right location, the alibi they would establish. "I'll need to see real tears from you at the funeral," Vivian told Michael with a chuckle. "None of that dry-eyed stoicism from when you buried Jessica," who I whispered to myself. "First wives don't get the same grief as second wives," Michael replied. Besides, the insurance company was asking too many questions. Had to appear appropriately devastated. First wives, Jessica, insurance questions. The pieces of a nightmare I never knew existed began clicking into place. This wasn't just about me. There had been others before. I sat frozen in the darkness, clutching my phone as it recorded the architects of my planned death discussing the weather at my funeral. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The two people sharing my home, my husband of 15 years and his mother, I'd sacrificed everything to care for, were actively plotting my murder for the first time in 7 years. I was grateful for the isolation they'd created around me. It gave me space to think, without arousing suspicion. Morning arrived with sickening normalcy. Michael kissed me goodbye, reminding me about my upcoming trip to Abby's. Vivian shuffled into the kitchen with her practiced vacant expression, needing help with her breakfast. I played my role perfectly, showing no sign that their masks had fallen. After Michael left, I checked my car, crawling underneath with a flashlight. Sure enough, there were fresh scratch marks around the brake line preliminary examinations for their planned accident. My hands trembled so badly I could barely take photos with my phone. I needed help, but who could I trust? The local police might dismiss me as paranoid. Michael had spent years portraying me as exhausted and emotionally fragile to anyone who would listen. I needed someone with no connection to my current life. Thomas Parker had been my college friend before becoming a respected attorney. We'd lost touch after I became Vivian's caregiver, but he was the only person I could think of who might believe me. I called his office, claiming I needed advice about updating my will. Lillian Matthews. His voice carried genuine warmth when I was shown into his office later that day. "It's been, my God, you look terrible." "I know." I attempted a smile. "It's been a rough few years. What can I help you with?" "Your will?" I glanced at his closed office door, lowering my voice. "That was just an excuse. I need help, Thomas. The kind that requires absolute confidentiality." His expression shifted. "To professional concern, you have it. Attorney-client privilege." I placed my phone on his desk and played the recording from the previous night. Thomas's face grew increasingly grave as Michael and Vivian's conversation unfolded their plans for my accident. The casual mention of a previous wife, the insurance policies. When it finished, he didn't speak immediately. "Have you gone to the police and tell them that my supposedly dementia-stricken mother-in-law is plotting with my husband to kill me?" "Look at me, Thomas." I gestured to my exhausted appearance. "I've been isolated for 7 years. They'll assume I'm having a breakdown." The recording could be dismissed as out of context. Michael could claim they were discussing a movie plot or rehearsing for community theater. I need more concrete evidence. Thomas contacted a friend at the police department, Detective James Ramirez, a seasoned investigator with experience in complex domestic cases. He agreed to meet us that afternoon in Thomas's office rather than at the station, where records of our conversation might alert Michael. Detective Ramirez was younger than I expected, with observant eyes that missed nothing. He listened to the recording twice before speaking. Unfortunately, Mrs. Matthews' conversations about potential future crimes, however disturbing, aren't typically actionable by themselves. He held up a hand as I began to protest. "However, the brake line tampering is attempted murder. If we can prove it, I need to see your vehicle." A mechanic friend of Ramirez confirmed the recent tampering. "Preliminary work," he explained. "They were checking how difficult it would be to access. If they'd actually cut it, you'd have noticed immediately when you tried to stop." "So now what?" I asked. "We need to catch them in the act," Ramirez said. "Right now, your husband could claim someone else tampered with your car, or that the mechanic is mistaken. We need irrefutable evidence connecting him to the tampering. You want me to wait until they actually sabotage my brakes when they're planning to kill me within days?" "No." Ramirez's expression hardened. "We're going to set a trap. Make them think they're succeeding while ensuring your safety." The plan took shape over the next few hours. I would appear to proceed with my trip to Abby's, giving Michael and Vivian the opportunity they were waiting for. But first, we needed more evidence to build an airtight case. "We can install hidden cameras throughout your house," Ramirez explained. "Not in bedrooms or bathrooms that would be legally problematic, but common areas where they might discuss their plans. I can create a reason for them to act sooner," I suggested. "Tell Michael I'm leaving earlier than planned." Back at home, I maintained my oblivious act while gathering what evidence I could. While Michael showered, I searched his office more thoroughly, discovering financial records hidden in a locked desk drawer. What I found chilled me to the bone. Michael was drowning in gambling debt. There were threatening letters from creditors, records of payday loans with exorbitant interest rates, and documentation for a second property purchased jointly by Michael and Viviana. Beachfront condo in Florida I knew nothing about. Most disturbing was a newspaper clipping about Catherine Jessica Bradford, who died in a car accident 5 years before Michael and I met. The accompanying photo showed Michael with his arm around a smiling blonde woman. The article mentioned she was survived by her husband, Michael Bradford. Michael had changed his last name from Bradford to Matthews' mother's maiden name after moving to our city. I photographed everything before, carefully returning it to its hiding place. That night, I laid another trap, casually mentioning to Michael that Abby had called she's having some pregnancy complications. I lied. Needs me to come sooner than we planned. I'm thinking of leaving the day after tomorrow instead of next weekend. I watched something flicker behind Michael's eyes, panic, then calculation. Of course, if she needs you, he said, squeezing my hand with what I now recognized as completely manufactured concern. Family comes first. Always has. The phrase he'd used to convince me to sacrifice my career now made my skin crawl. While Michael was at work the next day, I examined Vivian's room more carefully, finding a hidden compartment in her closet wall. Inside was a collection of items with different names, but Vivian's photo, newspaper clippings about insurance fraud cases, and a USB drive. I copied the drive's contents to my phone before replacing everything. The files contained disturbing research about methods to induce symptoms, mimicking dementia, detailed notes on medication interactions, and, surprisingly, information about Dr. Patel. A quick internet search confirmed what the documents suggested: his medical license had been suspended 5 years ago for fraudulent practices. Before being reinstated under probationary conditions, I provided everything to Detective Ramirez, who seemed grimly uncertain. Dr. Patel's been on our radar for suspected prescription fraud. This connects him to something much bigger. The next morning, a van labeled Wilson Home Renovations arrived at our house. Detective Ramirez's team, disguised as contractors. I told Michael I needed some bathroom tiles replaced before my trip. They'll install cameras in unobtrusive locations, Ramirez had explained. Smoke detectors, wall fixtures, even the thermostat. We'll monitor everything remotely. My sister Abby arrived as planned, providing both emotional support and an alibi for the unusual activity. While the contractors worked, we talked in the kitchen, our conversation deliberately mundane in case Michael called to check on me. Are you sure about this? Abby whispered when we were momentarily alone. It sounds absolutely insane. Lil, trust me, I wish it was. I showed her the photos I'd taken of Michael's hidden documents. They've been planning this for years. Following Ramirez's instructions, I accidentally left my life insurance documents visible on the desk in our bedroom, along with a calendar prominently marking my trip to Abby's. I made a point of mentioning to Michael that my sister had suggested I increase my coverage. With the baby coming, she's thinking about financial security, I explained, watching his reaction. I called our agent yesterday. The new policy should be active by next week. The predatory gleam in his eyes was quickly masked by a loving smile. That's smart planning, honey. Later that evening, I staged a phone call with Abby while Michael was in earshot, deliberately mentioning a treacherous stretch of road on my route. That mountain pass has had 3 accidents this year already. Maybe I should take the longer route through Millerton. Michael appeared in the doorway. No need to add an hour to your drive. I'll check your car thoroughly before you leave. Better safe than sorry. The surveillance team caught Michael examining my car that night, making a call to someone named Griffin from a burner phone he kept hidden in the garage. Detective Ramirez identified Griffin as a mechanic with a record of fraud and connections to 2 other suspicious vehicle accidents. We've been wanting to connect Griffin to these cases for months, Ramirez explained during our daily briefing at Thomas's office. Your husband just gave us the link we needed. The morning before my scheduled departure, Michael insisted on taking Vivian to her therapy session, giving the police an opportunity to install additional surveillance in areas they'd missed. In Michael's office, they found the burner phone I hadn't discovered, with text messages to Griffin discussing brake tampering methods that wouldn't be immediately detected in accident investigations. As my departure day approached, I followed Ramirez's advice to create additional evidence of intent. I told Michael I was having second thoughts about the trip. I had this weird dream about a car accident, I said over breakfast. Maybe it's a sign I should postpone. Michael reached across the table to take my hand, his eyes full of calculated concern. Honey, you know how much Abby needs you right now? It's just pre-travel anxiety. You'll feel better once you're on the road. His insistence that I not change my plan spoke volumes about his intentions. The final preparations were made the evening before my trip. Police technicians installed safety mechanisms in my car that would prevent actual brake failure, while still giving the appearance of tampering. I was fitted with a recording device disguised as a medical alert necklace, in case you need to capture any conversations away from the surveillance system, Ramirez explained. That night, I pretended to take the sleeping pill Michael offered, but tucked it under my tongue and disposed of it in the bathroom. Through half-closed eyes, I watched him wait until he thought I was asleep, then carefully remove my car keys from my purse and slip outside. The surveillance team confirmed he met Griffin in the driveway, who worked on my vehicle for approximately 30 minutes while Michael kept watch. Their whispered conversation, captured by the exterior cameras, centered on ensuring the brake line would fail completely, but only after I'd been driving for at least 20 minutes far enough from home to remove any suspicion of foul play. The morning of my planned departure arrived with surreal normalcy. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as I packed snacks for my drive, just as I would have if this were a genuine trip. In the bedroom, Michael was selecting clothes for the day, though the surveillance team had captured footage of him, and Vivian discussing which appropriately somber outfits they would wear to my funeral. The weight of the recording device against my chest was reassuring as I moved through my morning routine. Detective Ramirez and his team were monitoring everything from a van parked 2 blocks away. Thomas waited at his office, ready to provide a safe location if needed. Everything was in place. Got everything packed? Michael asked, his tone perfectly calibrated to sound caring. 7 years ago, I would have heard only loving concern. Now I recognized the predatory anticipation beneath. I think so, I replied, mirroring his pretense. Just some last-minute things to grab. Vivian shuffled into the kitchen in her bathrobe, maintaining her dementia act even though we were supposedly alone as a family. Going somewhere? She asked vacantly, her eyes darting to Michael for approval of her performance. Remember, Mom, Lillian's visiting her sister today. Michael guided her to a chair with practiced patience. Sister, Vivian frowned in manufactured confusion. I turned away, unable to stomach their performance any longer. For 7 years, I'd fallen for this act, sacrificed everything to care for a woman who had been plotting my death while laughing behind my back. Following the plan, I made a show of checking my route on my phone, deliberately mentioning the mountain road. Looks like there's construction on the bypass. I'll have to take Ridgeline Road through the mountains after all. Michael's eyes lit up briefly before he composed his features. Just take it slow on those curves. No rush. As I prepared to leave, Michael embraced me with unusual intensity, holding me longer than normal. Drive safe, he whispered. I love you. The words that had once warmed my heart now sent ice through my veins. This was a man saying goodbye to a woman he planned to murder, savoring the moment, like a connoisseur appreciating a vintage wine more. Surprising was Vivian's approach as I headed for the door. She shuffled forward, taking my hand in both of hers. For a moment, her vacant expression slipped, revealing the sharp, calculating woman beneath. Be careful on those mountain roads, dear, she whispered, a gleam of anticipation in her eyes. Before the mask of confusion returned, I drove away from the house I'd been imprisoned in for 7 years. Following the route Detective Ramirez had planned, the first 20 minutes passed uneventfully. As I wound through familiar neighborhoods onto the highway, Michael texted constantly, each message tracked by the surveillance team. How's the drive so far? Traffic? Okay. Let me know when you reach the mountain road. Each seemingly innocent message was plotting my location on the path to my intended death. I responded with equally casual updates, playing my role in this macabre theater as I approached the dangerous curve where brake failure would be catastrophic. I followed Ramirez's instructions, pressing the brake pedal firmly. As expected, it went straight to the floor in a convincing simulation, while the hidden backup system maintained actual control of the vehicle. I called Michael, my panic only partially fabricated. The knowledge that my husband had done this, had actually sabotaged a vehicle I was driving with the intention of killing me, made the fear in my voice entirely genuine. Michael, the brakes aren't working. I screamed into the phone. His response, captured perfectly by my recording device, was chillingly calm. Try pumping them, he suggested, his voice almost soothing. When I continued to panic, describing how the car was speeding toward a curve with a steep drop-off, his tone changed subtly. Sometimes these things happen, Lil, he said, the gentleness in his voice making his next words all the more horrifying. Just let go. Don't fight it. Whatever happens is meant to be. Not I'm calling 911. Not steer into the mountainside instead of the cliff. Just a smooth suggestion to accept my death. I don't want to die, I sobbed. Partly for the recording and partly from the genuine emotion of confronting how thoroughly my husband wanted me dead. We all have to go sometime, he replied. I'm here. With you until the end. Police officers intercepted me at the bottom of the hill, as planned, escorting me to a secure location where I could watch the next phase unfold. On split-screen monitors, I witnessed Michael's actions after our call was deliberately cut off. He stood motionless in our living room for several seconds. Then a slow smile spread across his face. He called out to Vivian, who emerged from her room moving with the confident stride she used when she thought no one was watching. It's done, he announced, pulling a bottle of champagne from the refrigerator. Ridgeline Road, just as planned. Vivian clapped her hands with girlish delight. That turned my stomach. How long until they find her? The ravine's pretty isolated. Could be hours. Maybe tomorrow? Michael popped the cork, filling 2 glasses. By then, the brake line will look like it failed naturally. Just a tragic accident. They clinked glasses. In a toast to my death, discussing how they would divide my possessions with the calculated efficiency of vultures. I want her jewelry, Vivian said, and that artwork in the hallway should fetch a good price. First we play the grieving family, Michael cautioned. At least 6 months before we start selling anything valuable. At my age, I don't have 6 months to waste, Vivian snapped. Not after 7 years of playing a vegetable. Their celebration confirmed everything, providing the final evidence Ramirez needed. I watched, numb with horror yet vindicated as they planned their new life using the insurance money from my death. As arranged, a police officer arrived at our house 2 hours later. From the surveillance feed, I watched him approach with appropriately solemn demeanor. Michael answered the door, his expression instantly shifting to concerned husband. Officer Bennett removed his hat, his rehearsed lines delivered perfectly. Mr. Matthews, I'm afraid there's been an accident involving your wife's vehicle on Ridgeline Road. Michael's performance was impressive. His knees buckled slightly, his hand gripping the doorframe for support. Is she? He managed to choke out. I'm very sorry, sir. The car went over an embankment. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. Vivian appeared behind Michael, her confusion act momentarily perfect as she clutched his arm. What's happening, Michael? Who's this man? Michael turned to embrace his mother, his back to the officer. As a smile of triumph flashed across his face, before he buried it against Vivian's shoulder in feigned grief. Thank you, officer, he said, his voice cracking on cue. Will someone contact us about ... arrangements? The medical examiner will call once they've completed their examination. Again, my condolences. The moment the police car pulled away, the act dissolved. Michael grabbed Vivian in a celebratory hug, both of them laughing with unrestrained glee. Free at last, Vivian exclaimed, executing a little dance that looked obscene coming from a woman who had pretended to barely be able to walk for 7 years. No more hiding, no more playing dumb, no more watching that sanctimonious bitch waste what could have been ours years ago. $2 million, the house, and freedom, Michael replied, refilling their champagne glasses. Worth every minute of waiting. I couldn't watch anymore. I turned away from the monitors, meeting Detective Ramirez's gaze. We have everything we need, he said quietly. More than enough. 20 minutes later, I watched from the police station. As officers arrested Michael at our house, the surveillance cameras captured his shock when officers informed him of the charges: attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and a host of other crimes. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. My wife just died. This is harassment. Your wife is very much alive, Mr. Matthews, Ramirez informed him, stepping into view, and we have everything on tape. The color drained from Michael's face. At the same moment, officers entered to arrest Vivian, who abandoned all pretense of dementia, cursing fluently and demanding her attorney with perfect clarity. Her performance, captured on police body cameras, was the final nail in the coffin of their deception. I watched their world collapse from the safety of the police station. Monitors displayed Michael and Vivian in separate interrogation rooms, their carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of irrefutable evidence. We've been building this case for weeks, Detective Ramirez explained, as we observed. But what we discovered goes far beyond just your situation. He slid a file across the table. Inside were photographs of Michael with another woman, the same blonde from the newspaper clipping I'd found. Catherine Jessica Bradford, Ramirez confirmed. Michael's first wife. Died in what appeared to be a tragic car accident 5 years before you met him. Brake failure on a mountain road. The parallel made me nauseous. He's done this before. We believe so. The case was closed as an accident, but we're reopening it now. The insurance payout was substantial, not as much as yours would have been, but enough to set Michael and Vivian up comfortably until they found their next target. Me, I whispered. You? Ramirez nodded. Except they got greedy. The amount on your policies raised red flags with our financial crimes unit, which is why we were able to move so quickly once you came forward. On the monitors, Michael and Vivian's interrogations took dramatically different turns. Michael, once confronted with the evidence, attempted to shift blame to his mother. She manipulated me, he insisted, tears streaming down his face. She's been controlling me my whole life. I was afraid of her. You don't know what she's capable of. In the adjacent room, Vivian was spinning her own narrative. My son has always been disturbed, she told the detective interviewing her. I played along with his schemes to protect myself. Do you think I wanted to pretend to have dementia? He forced me. I'm the victim here. Their contradictory confessions strengthened the prosecution's case while revealing the depth of their dysfunction. Neither was willing to accept responsibility, each throwing the other under the bus without hesitation. "What happens now?" I asked Ramirez. "They'll be held without bail. The district attorney is already preparing charges." He hesitated. "There's more you should know. We've uncovered evidence linking Michael and Vivian to 2 additional suspicious deaths." My breath caught. Who, an elderly neighbor from their previous residence in Seattle, Vivian, was her caregiver before the woman died suddenly, leaving Vivian a substantial inheritance. And Vivian's former brother-in-law who had a fatal allergic reaction while under her care. The magnitude of their crimes expanded before my eyes. This wasn't just about me. It was a pattern spanning decades, claiming multiple victims. "Your detailed records of Vivian's care are proving invaluable," Ramirez continued. "The inconsistencies you documented, combined with the surveillance evidence, have helped us connect these cases." As if on cue, another detective entered the room. "We've apprehended Dr. Patel attempting to board a flight to India," she announced. "He's agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced charges." Patel's cooperation revealed a broader conspiracy. He had falsified medical records for several patients, helping families commit insurance fraud by documenting non-existent conditions. In most cases, the patients were willing participants, but my situation was different. I was an intended victim, not an accomplice. The days that followed passed in a blur of statements, evidence reviews, and legal consultations. Thomas remained by my side throughout, providing both legal counsel and emotional support as I confronted the full scope of the betrayal. "They're offering a plea deal," he informed me a week after the arrests. "Both Michael and Vivian. They each want to testify against the other." "Let them," I said, surprising myself with my coldness. "Let them destroy each other the way they tried to destroy me." The case quickly garnered media attention. Journalists dubbed it the dementia deception, with headlines highlighting the elaborate fraud and murder plot. Despite Thomas's efforts to shield me, I became the public face of the story, the architect who sacrificed her career to care for a mother-in-law who was faking her illness while plotting her murder. I agreed to a single interview, hoping to control the narrative and raise awareness about similar schemes. "I want to prevent this from happening to anyone else," I explained to Thomas, who reluctantly arranged a meeting with a respected journalist. The trial began 6 months after the arrests. I testified on the first day, recounting the years of deception in methodical detail. The courtroom fell silent as I described my gradual suspicions, the evidence I'd gathered, and finally, the recordings that confirmed the murder plot. For the first time since his arrest, I looked directly at Michael as I testified, the man I'd loved for 15 years, whose children I'd hoped to bear, whose mother I'd sacrificed my career to care, for he met my gaze with empty eyes, a stranger wearing my husband's face. The prosecution presented the evidence meticulously, footage, financial records, medical documents, and perhaps most damning, Vivian's journal. The leather-bound book contained entries dating back decades, revealing a lifelong pattern of manipulation and fraud. One passage, read aloud by the prosecutor, sent murmurs through the courtroom. "Michael shows promise as a partner. He's learning to identify the right kind of woman, professionally successful but emotionally vulnerable. Lillian Matthews is perfect, ambitious enough to have substantial earning potential, family money in the background, and clearly desperate for connection after her last relationship ended. We'll need to be patient with this one." The journal revealed they had targeted me specifically, researching my background and orchestrating a meeting that I had always believed was coincidental. Entries documented how they'd coached Michael to present himself as the perfect partner, identifying my vulnerabilities and exploiting them systematically. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts for both Michael and Vivian. The judge, citing the calculated cruelty of their crimes, imposed maximum sentences, effectively ensuring that Michael would spend at least 20 years in prison and Vivian, given her age, would likely die behind bars. The courtroom emptied slowly after the sentencing. Reporters rushed to file their stories while legal teams gathered their materials. I remained seated, feeling neither the vindication nor closure I'd expected. 12 years of my life had been consumed by this deception, my promising career derailed, my youthful dreams of family abandoned, my trust shattered at 40. I faced the daunting prospect of rebuilding from scratch. My professional skills were outdated, my network dissolved, my confidence eroded by years of gaslighting and isolation. "What now?" Thomas asked gently as we left the courthouse, pushing through a crowd of reporters, shouting questions. "I don't know," I admitted. "I haven't thought beyond this day." My sister Abby offered her home while I regrouped. "Stay as long as you need," she insisted. "The kids adore their Aunt Lil." The offer was tempting, the comfort of family, the protective bubble of suburban routine. But something within me resisted. After years of confinement, of having my independence systematically stripped away, I craved space to rediscover myself. I need to stand on my own, I told her, but thank you. Instead, I accepted a modest apartment above my friend Rebecca's art gallery. The space was small but flooded with natural light, a stark contrast to the shadowy existence I'd endured. Rebecca offered part-time work managing the gallery while I explored my options. No pressure, she assured me. Just a way to get back into the world at your own pace. The insurance companies, after reviewing the evidence, awarded me the full policy amounts Michael had taken out, acknowledging me as a victim rather than a suspected accomplice. This financial cushion allowed me to enroll in courses updating my architectural credentials without immediate pressure to find full-time employment. My first architecture class felt like coming home. The familiar language of design, the creative problem-solving, the tangible satisfaction of seeing concepts take form, these reconnected me to the self I'd nearly lost. Yet something had changed. My perspective was different, shaped by years of caregiving, even if the care had been tragically misplaced. One afternoon, volunteering at a community center, I overheard an elderly man describing his struggles to find appropriate housing for his wife with early-stage Alzheimer's. The facilities are either sterile institutions or completely unaffordable, he explained, frustration evident in his voice. There's nothing that feels like a home while still providing the safety features she needs. A spark ignited within me, the passionate ambition of my youth, but something steadier, more purposeful. I approached him, introducing myself as an architect. What if there was a third option? I suggested. Housing designed specifically for dementia patients that maintained dignity and a sense of home. Over the following months, this conversation evolved into a concept, then plans, then a concrete project. I established a nonprofit partnership with healthcare providers to develop accessible housing for seniors and disabled individuals, particularly those with cognitive impairments. My first-hand knowledge of caregiving challenges, however fraudulent. The context had been provided insights that purely academic training couldn't match. Through this work, I met Vincent Taylor, a widower whose wife had suffered from genuine dementia before her death. Unlike Michael's calculated patience, Vincent's devotion to his wife had been authentic, exhausting, heartbreaking, but grounded in genuine love. You understand, he said, during one of our planning meetings, not just the technical requirements, but what it feels like to watch someone you love disappear a little more each day. I didn't correct his assumption. In a strange way, I had experienced that grief not for Vivian, but for the life and relationship I believed I had. The slow recognition that my reality was a carefully constructed lie had its own form of anguish. As my professional life gradually rebuilt, I established a support network for victims of long-term psychological abuse, particularly those manipulated by family members. The group started small, just 4 of us meeting in Rebecca's gallery after hours, but grew steadily as word spread. Each story reinforced that I wasn't alone, that others had survived similar betrayals and found ways to move forward. 18 months after the trial, I received an unexpected letter. The return address showed a name I didn't recognize, Wells, but the handwriting bore a disturbing resemblance to Vivian's. I almost discarded it, unopened, but curiosity prevailed. Inside was a 10-page letter from Vivian's estranged sister, whom I hadn't known existed. Caroline had seen the news coverage and reached out to provide context I hadn't expected. The manipulation you experienced wasn't unique to you, she wrote. Our family has a dark history of elaborate cons spanning generations. Vivian learned from our mother, who learned from hers. I broke away decades ago, but Vivian embraced this legacy, teaching Michael from childhood to target kind, trusting people like you, chosen specifically for their generous nature. Caroline's letter provided a strange form of closure, confirmation that I hadn't simply been gullible, but had been specifically targeted by people who had refined their manipulation techniques over generations. 2 years after the trial concluded, I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first assisted living facility designed by my new architectural practice. Unlike traditional institutions, the Matthews Memorial Care Center, named not for my husband, but for my maiden name I'd reclaimed, featured family-style living arrangements with subtle safety features integrated into the design. Most innovative were the surveillance systems disguised as home features, protection for vulnerable residents that mirrored how I had ultimately protected myself, cameras resembling smoke detectors, emergency call buttons integrated into decorative elements, monitoring systems that preserved dignity while ensuring safety. As I cut the ribbon, surrounded by healthcare workers, elder advocates, and journalists, covering the facility's innovative approach, I caught sight of my reflection in the building's glass facade. At 42, I looked younger than I had at 40. The hollows in my cheeks filled out. The haunted look in my eyes replaced by purposeful clarity. The woman who had once been reduced to a caregiver, a target, a nearly victim now stood as a creator and advocate, a survivor who had transformed her trauma into expertise that would help others. The experience that had nearly destroyed me had instead revealed my true resilience and purpose. "Your vision is remarkable," Vincent said, joining me as the crowd moved inside for the tour. "You've created something beautiful from something terrible." I smiled, watching elderly residents and their families explore their new home, the carefully designed spaces offering both independence and security. "Sometimes," I replied, "the deepest wounds become the clearest windows." As I moved through the building, explaining design features and greeting new residents, I felt the final fragments of Lillian the victim falling away. The betrayal would always be part of my story, but no longer its defining chapter. What began as a sacrifice imposed through deception had transformed into a purpose, chosen with complete clarity, my own life, reclaimed and rebuilt on foundations stronger than before. What would you sacrifice for the ones you love? And how would you know if they'd do the same for you? If this tale of betrayal and rebirth kept you on the edge of your seat, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories of survival against all odds.